While the weather conditions at Newcastle's dawn service may have been less than ideal, the spirit of the day helped participants endure the rain. Up to 5,000 braved the downpour, huddled under a sea of umbrellas. Soldiers stood unflinching as it bucketed down. Many then made their way to the Newcastle RSL sub-branch for a traditional Anzac Day breakfast. Veterans touched by the sheer number of people who attended the dawn service.
It's very gratifying. It makes you very proud to be an Australian.
We are now in a position where we are benefiting from their bravery.
And the Cooks Hill Surf Lifesaving Club was filled to capacity for its memorial service to honour the 9 club members killed in World War I. Despite the deluge, Newcastle's Anzac March went ahead as normal. While some covered up, others braved the soaking rain. And it could be the last time the march passes the memorial statue outside the old Newcastle Post Office, with the RSL sub-branch proposing to move it once the building is converted into a nightclub.
Newcastle City are the custodians of that memorial, and it's just their concern to keep it as safe as they can,
Meanwhile, those who didn't make it to earlier services were able to cram into Newcastle City Hall for the late morning United commemoration service.
Across the harbour at Stockton, the rain forced the cancellation of the march to the cenotaph, with commemorations moved indoors. But despite the downpour, the dawn service forged ahead.
Very wet, but I believe that from everybody that I've spoken to, no one complained about the rain because it was a small sacrifice to make for what they made to us.
Inside the RSL club, the emotion of the main service was no less solemn or stirring. Wearing medals with pride, comrades, relatives and school children laid wreaths in remembrance. On the eastern side of Lake Macquarie, the Swansea March was also washed out, with the RSL auditorium hosting a committed crowd of 500. After a delayed start, which took its toll on some, the service commemorated the 90th anniversary of the World War I Battle of Beersheba. The Australian Light Horse Brigade suffered heavy losses during that campaign. Many of those killed were from the Hunter.
The charge was over a 6-kilometre front, 6 kilometres across, and they rode into heavy artillery and heavy rifle fire.
Bush poet Bob Skelton wrote a special verse in their memory.
Though that charge at Beersheba is now long gone, we must never forget it, of course, for Australia owes so much and then more to those brave mounted heroes, the Australian Light Horse.
With their hair a little whiter and for some their step not so sure, they marched on proudly at Greta as they did the year before. They fought their way through jungles, rugged hillsides and blood-soaked desert sands, and today they remember comrades who rest in foreign lands. This poem excerpt encapsulates the essence of Anzac Day, and with medals worn proudly, younger generations today help to carry on the tradition of their forefathers. And in Maitland, the Anzac spirit shone through as former servicemen and women paid their respects to those who fought and those who fell, making the ultimate sacrifice. Among those to speak, highly decorated digger Alf Stone. And while hundreds braved the rain in Maitland, it was torrential at Nelson Bay, forcing the commemorations inside the RSL club. While many counted the cost of war, there were also prayers for those currently serving overseas. Among the veterans, 85-year-old Bert Ferris, a rat of Tobruk and military medal recipient. And as the bugle sounded the last post, he and his comrades recalled the siege of Old Tobruk, the mud of the Kokoda Trail, and remembered those who paid the supreme sacrifice with courage that did not fail. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
And I've looked out and just saw sparks and the tree just bang, fell down.
It's just a bigger ute, really. You know, I've been racing the V8 utes for a few years, but these got a lot more power and they're a lot of fun to drive.
To put things simply, it's a game of heads and tails.
For the simple person like myself, it's really just brings blokes like me and this guy, and I don't really know him, but it's brought us together today.
But would you believe there are still those who have no idea why we play the game on this sacred national holiday? What do you think Two Up's played?
I have no idea. Do you know? Serious?
She was serious, so let's help her out.
I think it may very well have started 2 rows back from the trenches in the Anzac tradition.
Yeah, lots of people used to play it, so it's a good way to remember what they used to do in the wartime, yep.
It's been going on for so long and there's never been a drama, so yeah, we kept it going and it's all running really well at the moment.
The spinner being the person who tosses the coins. To stay in the circle and increase the prize, you have to get at least 2 heads. There are side bets too, and for today at least, it's all legal in the back rooms of pubs and clubs.
Everyone can be trusted. I love nothing more than the fact that you can pass your $20 across 200 people and it's going to come back to you every time. So there's no other day you can do it but today.
We should really promote things that are Australian and keep that tradition going, I think.
Adam McIlwright, NBN News.
Just a couple of months ago, this was a dry, grassy paddock filled with cattle. Today, the Taro farmland instead resembled a lake, complete with black swans. These low-lying pastures near the Air Force Base were also waterlogged. No surprise, given Williamtown received close to 180 millimetres over the last 4 days. The rainfall has been well above average across the Lower Hunter for this time of year and could even strike a record for the month.
It's been the most rainfall we've had for the month since 2002, but we'll have to wait and see for another couple of days whether we get past that record.
And the deluge has caused plenty of problems, with trees toppling over and roofs leaking.
Certainly over Tuesday and Wednesday we've been fairly busy with calls for assistance. We've received 129 in total, about 54 from the Newcastle area and about 70 from Lake Macquarie.
According to Hunter Water, an extra 80 millimetres was recorded at Grahamstown Dam in the last 24 hours, raising the Hunter's water storage by 2% to 81% capacity.
There's been a little bit go inland, but not nearly enough that would be of any great relief. 1 or 2 mils in most areas, and the most that I've got on our records is 6 mils at Tocal.
But more rainfall is on its way late tomorrow and Saturday, and this time should reach the Upper Hunter. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
An increased police presence meant what little trouble there was on Anzac Day was quickly dealt with.
We're pretty happy with the outcomes of the day. Most people were well behaved and most people were there for the right reasons. It's just unfortunate you have a few individuals that took it a little bit too far.
While many in Newcastle pubs like the Delaney and Cricketers Arms chose to close early, MJ Finnegan stuck to normal operating hours and didn't shut until 10, with patron numbers closely monitored and restrictions put in place on the amount of alcohol that could be purchased.
No problems, good day, lots of fun, probably about 1,700 people through the door on the day itself.
Police say the early closure of licensed venues reinforces the wisdom of a weekend's lockout.
It's a good example of what happens when the amount of alcohol being traded over extended period is restricted. It certainly reduces the number of intoxicated persons around, and the streets cleared very quickly.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
We're expecting roughly 100 signatures a day, and we've been getting from 200 to 300 a day. So it's obviously an issue at the forefront of most Australians' consciousness.
Daniel Abraham has been fighting an ankle injury all week, but in his absence, Riley Brown is slated for the 5/8 spot.
Riles is one of those special players where he can play anywhere, and given the jersey, he'll do a great job there.
As for playing everywhere, Todd Polglaze has it covered, leaving Curry for the Bulldogs, then the Rabbitohs, before finding a home on the wing in Newcastle.
It's always something that I wanted to do, especially as I got older. I started getting more sick of Sydney and wanted to move home close to the family, and it just the way it panned out last year, and I was lucky enough to get an opportunity back here.
The game against Cronulla is still 4 days away, yet the Knights are wary of Sharks, but it's the possibility of country duties on Thursday night, then the Bulldogs on Sunday that's going to make for a tough week at the office.
No, they're 3 pretty torrid games, and it's about the product. I guess players can't keep turning up playing 80 minutes as 100 mile an hour like they have been.
In other Knights news, the club will hold its AGM tonight, where members will vote on whether or not to reduce the number of Newcastle Rugby League directors on the board from 4 to 2. It comes after a bitter boardroom battle 2 months ago.
I think that in all associations, after a while, the constitutions have to be looked at.
Adam McIlwright, NBN News. They've been training under a grey sky of late, but the future is indeed bright for the Caves Beach IRB team. The competition is based on surf rescue situations, and compared to other clubs, Caves Beach is the best in the world.
It's not too hard to jump in a rubber ducky and drive it in a flat surf, but when you get into a surf like we've had here today, people's skill certainly comes to the fore.
Mainly people start on patrols and they'll work away to LIB racing, and they'll probably finish up sticking with the sport and loving the sport as what it's for.
A squad of 22, they haven't lost a state series since 2001, and another defence begins this weekend in Sydney. As world champions, though, everyone wants a piece of the Caves Beach cruise, and they've since accepted an invitation to race a round of the Queensland Series to better prepare for the Nationals, a title missing from their trophy cabinet.
These guys, they're not just good competitors, they're also great friends. They really want to be together, they want to compete together, and they want to win together.
Togetherness is the buzzword at Caves Beach. Phil and Alicia Angel met while competing, all part of the successful mix.
Yeah, so far we've been pretty lucky with all our combinations. Obviously getting to race with my wife is probably number one.
She's a champion at the moment, she's my hero, yeah, trying to send me out all these sailing comps and that, and sitting out waiting and watching me. It's really good.
Newcastle and the city surrounds are full of potential casino sites. The former dockyard site at Dyke Point, BHP's one-time administration building, and even the Royal Newcastle Hospital site could all potentially house a gaming establishment. The Hunter Business Chamber would support such a venture, claiming a casino would be an economic coup for Newcastle.
It would lift us from a profile point of view. And of course, during the construction phase, you've got builders and other people getting jobs.
However, the Lord Mayor has reservations.
Certainly there'll be some jobs and the suppliers of goods will probably benefit, but there'll be a social impact and a social cost, and that needs to be clearly quantified before you can make a decision.
But if Newcastle doesn't want one, the Mayor of Cessnock does, saying a casino would complement the Hunter Valley's already blooming vineyard and tourism industries. What's more, Cessnock already has an airport and several luxury hotels to cater for high rollers. But the odds of the Hunter ever getting a casino are at this stage anyone's guess. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Won by the narrowest of margins, just 68 votes separating Craig Bowman from his Labor rival. Today it was time for the Port Stephens MP to celebrate with his party's new leader. But the meeting was also about getting down to business, the Liberal Party taking its first step to become a more effective opposition and develop stronger policies for the Hunter over the next 4 years.
We made an effort in relation to Maitland at the last election campaign. We'll continue to do that. We need to continue the pressure in all of the seats across the Hunter. We need to ensure that Craig Bowman changes his 68 vote margin into a 6,800 vote margin.
The Coalition is setting up a Hunter task force, including local Upper House member Robin Parker and Mr Bowman. They've also called on local mayors John Tate and Peter Blackmore for advice on Hunter issues.
Whether it's policing in Port Stephens or whether it's transport services and bus services in Newcastle, clearly what's being offered now is substandard. The government has to do better, and we as an opposition are going to hold them to account.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. Once a thriving place of worship during its 36-year history, St Mark's Chapel, situated near the Hunter Street Mall, held its last Mass on February 25. And now another place of worship at Merriweather is set to close. The reason, a dire shortage of clergy.
Merriweather Beach Holy Family Mass Centre will close. So, and that's as a result of the reduced number of clergy, but also a result of the reduced number of people who we have coming to Mass as well.
There's 1,500 parishioners who regularly attend Mass centres at Broadmeadow, Hamilton, Tyers Hill, Merewether and Newcastle. But currently there's just one full-time priest, Monsignor Alan Hart, to cover all of those areas. The Maitland-Newcastle Diocese is now grappling with the future. It says it's a sad state of affairs with their traditional Sunday Mass now under threat due to an ageing clergy.
Catholicity was so attached to Sunday Mass, and if Sunday Masses are reduced, then what does it mean to be Catholic, and how do we live that out in our present day?
Possible solutions include bringing clergy from overseas and increasing the workload of lay people. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
This morning's training session was the first Josh Perry has been able to complete all week due to sore ribs, and as long as he gets through one tonight, he'll be right to play.
Just then, we're doing a lot of exercise that I probably couldn't have done at the start of the week, and yeah, I'm pretty confident that I'll play now for sure.
Off contract this season, Perry's happy with his improvement after a slow start to the year, but isn't too worried that his playing future is far from settled.
I'm starting to play a lot better footy now, and that'll sort itself out. And if I have to go somewhere else, I have to go. But fingers crossed, I can stay here.
Daniel Abraham was still unable to run on his injured ankle this morning, while Daniel Toller also remains in serious doubt, with Mitchell Sargent on standby. Overnight, the club was unable to complete its AGM without some level of drama, when the much talked about vote to decrease the number of board members was fast-tracked before question time. Despite some commotion, the resolution was passed by an overwhelming majority of almost 98%, which effectively cuts the number of Newcastle Rugby League board members from 4 to 2 after the current term is served. Also recognised overnight were a number awarded life membership, including Neville Allen, inaugural chairman Max Fox, former captain and coach Michael Hagan, Test centre Matt Gidley and Brian Jack.
Won by the narrowest of margins, just 68 votes separating Craig Bowman from his Labor rival. Today it was time for the Port Stephens MP to celebrate with his party's new leader. But the meeting was also about getting down to business, the Liberal Party taking its first step to become a more effective opposition and develop stronger policies for the hunter over the next 4 years.
We made an effort in relation to Maitland at the last election campaign. We'll continue to do that. We need to continue the pressure in all of the seats across the hunter. We need to ensure that Craig Bowman changes his 68 vote margin into a 6,800 vote margin.
The Coalition is setting up a hunter task force, including local Upper House member Robin Parker and Mr Bowman. They've also called on local mayors John Tate and Peter Blackmore for advice on hunter issues.
Whether it's policing in Port Stephens or whether it's transport services and bus services in Newcastle, clearly what's being offered now is substandard. The government has to do better, and we as an opposition are going to hold them to account.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Just this week, these two houses in Parkway Avenue sold for $3.3 million, while this John Parade property was snapped up for $2.8 million, $150,000 short of the city's record. According to the Real Estate Institute of New South Wales, the top end of the Hunters real estate market is flourishing.
It's been over the last 12 months we've seen a good increase in the number of sales and confidence returning as we see a lot more people prepared to pay that $1 million+ mark for those sales.
Real estate agents are breathing a sigh of relief now that buyer confidence, at least in the high end of the market, appears to be back.
The market's never ever been stronger and there's still a lot of inquiry.
While steady interest rates are obviously helping sales, agents say they're of little consequence to those who can afford to spend up big.
Most of the people that are buying over $1 million, rarely they borrow any money.
Meanwhile, the lower end of the market's moving along too, with a 4% growth on sales figures over the past 12 months. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
In 2005 we had approximately 50 fire deaths, and in 2006 we've gone down to 19. So we're hoping that the new smoke alarm legislation plus education campaigns is starting to reduce the number of fire deaths.
Jamie Pittman has been a frustrated man of late. After a great start to his professional career, he's been forced out for the last 6 months due to reconstructive surgery on his right hand, and he was out to make up for lost time on his Thai opponent, Kongrit Nanakorn. But in round 2, it was his left hand that came off second best. It didn't stop the Athens Olympian from doing the business, with his lightning speed catching the Thai fighter more than once. By the final rounds, Pittman had Nanakorn beaten, but it's X-rays back in Newcastle that will disclose the damage to his left hand, with another fight at Tweed Heads already booked in next month. His main goal is to be fighting at the lighter but ultra-competitive middleweight class by the end of the year. Toronto's Les Mason made it 2 from 2 in his pro career in a bout that went the distance. While it was also a night for ex-league players, with Monty Beetham and Solomon Homono, easy victors in their fights.
In 77, when Michael sort of flogged me, I felt, Mick was flogging me in that one too. So, but it was a ton of fun.
The mission to reduce late-night antisocial behaviour and alcohol-related crime in Newcastle's central business district was outlined to police at an 8 p.m. briefing. Police cars, caged trucks and unmarked vehicles then took to the streets, descending en masse on the western end of the Hunter Street Mall. Teams of officers patrolled the city's known trouble spots, including the Foreshore Park, following several late-night assaults. Licensed venues were also inspected, with some patrons escorted outside.
We've got a significant amount of extra personnel on, from Operational Support Group Police, Beat Police, Licensing Police, Tactical Action Group Police, over and above First Response. So we're making every effort we possibly can to address the issues that are occurring within the city.
At midnight, the city was relatively trouble-free, but with a majority of crime and assaults occurring after 2 a.m, police remained vigilant.
Well, being the fact that last night was quite wet, tonight we've got a lot more people out enjoying the night, and so far we haven't had too many problems.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
In truth, no one really knew what to expect from a Hunter Jaegers side that retained only 5 players from last season, but Alex Harding is shaping as a name to get used to. Making her National League debut, the goal shooter showed few nerves as Hunter took control early. There's nothing like a captain's knock, and new skipper James Menzies heaped on the pressure from mid-court. That's not to say Hunter had it all its own way, with Perth's tall timber hard to stop once on goal. Although going on some solid scoring streaks, the Orioles always trailed. As the game wore on, the Jaegers' confidence grew and the experience of Lara Wellham only helped, shooting 22 from 26 attempts. It wasn't always Perth that got in Hunter's way. But they did finish off 56-51 winners to start their final season the right way.
On Friday night, this quiet street in Charlestown became the scene of a violent group assault. Witnesses say more than 30 people, allegedly from a gang known as the God Defend Us Brothers, descended on Vince King's 18th birthday party. According to the King family, who didn't want to appear on camera today, the gang vandalised their house, car and garage before assaulting party guests with hammers, cricket bats and a knife. The gatecrashers then only left the residence after being threatened with a spear gun. Meanwhile, at Holmesville, residents are trying to get 18th birthday parties banned from the community hall, following repeated and terrifying problems with gate-crashing gangs.
Smash everything up. Bash anyone they can find and basically just run amok. Run amok because they don't care who they hit, who they hurt, what damage they do.
Police are urging people to notify them if they plan to host a party and to obtain a party pack either from the internet or their local station.
If police are advised that the party will occur, we're certainly able to plan for it from our own perspective. At times we can roster additional police.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
The farming of fish on land may still be in its infancy, but it's an active little industry. Product from tailor-made barramundi at Port Stephens is now in such high demand that General Manager Nick Arena has to decide which orders he can fill.
One major buyer that we've had to say no to now 4 times is the Sydney Convention Centre.
A large function order from the centre would be Barra for 5,000. Too much at this stage, but a prize catch when a $1.8 million expansion currently underway is completed and fish production ramps up. That work is now set to continue with a processing plant to be built within 12 months to handle TaylorMade's barramundi and product from other fish farmers across the state. It also signals an impending supermarket battle between imported and Australian farmed seafood.
And allow us to market that under a label that will let people, Australian people, know they're buying Australian product and supporting local farmers by doing so.
A stoush supported by the federal government through $500,000 of industry support for TaylorMade's processing plant.
We want to see the jobs growth. We want to see seafood replacement on our shelves with Australian grown seafood.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
Like in the classroom, it can help them interact with their peers. Communication's a big aspect of learning as well, so it can help them achieve those goals as well.
The Heart Foundation Commission statistics are alarming. 61% of Australians wouldn't call 000 if they thought they were having a heart attack. Ambulance officer Jodie Adams says it's a decision that's costing lives.
Those figures are quite high and quite disturbing. What we'd like to encourage people to do is call an ambulance early if they are experiencing chest pain, and don't necessarily wait to see if it'll go away.
The majority of those surveyed say they'd feel embarrassed if they wasted the ambulance officer's time should what they thought was a heart attack turn out to be a false alarm.
Well, they're so embarrassed that they could die. I mean, that's the simple reality. Every 10 minutes in Australia, one person dies. 130 people die each day. 25,000 people each year die of coronary disease.
Particularly elderly people don't like to call us because they feel that they're a bother. But what we say is that that's what we're here for. You call us out.
David Simmons has undergone heart bypass surgery himself. He urges others to recognise the early warning signs such as fainting, nausea and chest, arm, neck or jaw pain and get immediate help.
And we all think we're bulletproof. It's going to happen to someone else. And our message is, with chest pain, every second counts. Don't be afraid. Don't be embarrassed to ring 000.
Christy Carter, NBN News.
Still only 22, it seems Nick Flanagan has been knocking on the door of a major professional tournament win for years. But that's what happens when you win the US Amateur as a teenager. Well used to the expectation and pressure that comes with it, Flanagan was still desperate for that breakthrough victory, and he fought all the way in a challenging final round of the Henrico Open. Finishing at 13 under, he went into a four-way sudden death playoff. It was down to 3 by the second hole, and had this dropped in, Flanagan would have stood alone. After playing the third and fourth rounds together, it was fitting that it came down to Flanagan and Chris Barilla by the third extra hole. The pair had brought out the best in each other and now went head-to-head. The Canadian needing to hold this to stay in touch. Opening the door for the Australian, Flanagan tapped in. The relief was obvious. The 22-year-old winning his first nationwide tour event and $81,000 US to move to 8th on the order of merit and one big step closer to a US PGA Tour card.
Just keep playing well and hopefully a few more of these, and now just going to go home and have a break for 2 weeks and come back and do it again.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. Less than a month since breaking his collarbone, Brock Parkes was out to accumulate some championship points. At least he kept out of the early stoushes. But it didn't take long for the front-runners to start mixing it up either. On a more than competitive Yamaha these days, Parkes wasn't taking a backward step. But in some of the tightest racing in this class all season, there were positional changes on almost every corner over the opening laps. as no one gave an inch. Moving between 5th and 2nd at times, Parkes got locked into a duel with Frenchman Fabien Ferret. He was quite literally giving the Frenchman the shakes, but he eventually got his man with 3 laps remaining, just enough time to push for first. With 1 to go and 2nd sewn up, disaster. He couldn't believe it, as 2nd place in not only the race, but the overall Riders' Championship went begging. Meanwhile, one of Australia's richest sports people, Curry-bred Chad Reed, has secured 2nd place in the World and AMA Supercross Championships in America with a round remaining. It's been a frustrating year for Reed, who's endured a season of injury.
Tai Chi is a series of slowly flowing movements that is said to help muscles, tendons and ligaments, as well as with breathing difficulties and diseases like arthritis. Newcastle's Shirley Langford says she's a living testament to the practice's benefits. 5 years ago, the 62-year-old was forced to retire due to health reasons. After surgery and various treatments failed, her doctors gave up on her.
They told me to go away. I'd probably finish up in a wheelchair, and they didn't want to know me.
4 years on, and the difference 14 hours of Tai Chi every week has made is evident.
I get up every day and say, well, I'm going to Tai Chi, that's great. And then I come home and I think, well, what I've done today, I'm not supposed to be able to do.
Recovering ice addict Kane Baker is the first to admit that the drug causes violent episodes.
I'd be on it for about 2 days, then I'm coming down, then it's my loved ones that actually copped it.
Lower Hunter police and ambulance officers have had to deal with several psychotic drug users in the last few days, and the ambulance union says its officers simply aren't adequately trained.
We're getting called to people with mental problems who are the people who are using the ice. And we're there to try and either restrain them, treat them, transport them to hospitals.
But the service says it is providing extra training.
We've recently brought in some mental health training for all the ambulance officers, and all the officers within the Hunter area, they'll be trained by the end of June.
The union says self-defence should be included in the training, with as many as 73,000 Australians now addicted to the methamphetamine.
Police resources are stretched as much as ours are, and ambulance officers are going to be put in that first line, so they should be taught takedown techniques so that they can protect themselves, the patients and the family members that are around these patients and members of the public at times.
Paul Lobb, NBN News. Warners Bay firm Cowan Manufacturing is just one example of what is made here and sold to the world. Its highly successful recompression chambers used by scuba divers, sold to the Royal Australian Navy and exported to the United States and Southeast Asia. But metalwork is only part of an industry that has products as diverse as thoroughbred horses and wine.
While the hunter is a successful exporter, Bob Cowan has today identified the future availability of workers as a major challenge facing the sector. He argues it's time for industry self-promotion to get school students interested in manufacturing.
Not only the companies themselves and those people that work for those companies know what they do, but the rest of the hunter and indeed the rest of Australia know how important that company is and the type of products that they produce.
While Triad Trade Days have opened eyes, Bob Cowan wants teenagers to understand hunter tradespeople are well paid, earning as much as $2,000 a week, and the skill shortage now means a trade is no longer a dead-end job.
But if you're an apprentice or a good tradesperson, then you can climb the ladder quite rapidly into management.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
It's possibly the biggest and brightest ad for the Hunter Valley the region has ever seen. After working in the area for the past 28 years, the operators of Balloon Aloft decided they wanted to give something back to the community and try to boost the hunter's profile.
We've got to do something for the valley, and we had so many pictures taken of our balloons all the time, and they never say Hunter Valley, so this time it says Balloon Aloft, the Hunter Valley.
The balloon itself was designed by 9-year-old Georgia McManus, who says the colour scheme was inspired by a rainbow.
I had flown with Balloon Aloft and we were in this darker balloon, and she was very disappointed with my photos, so she wanted to make something really bright and colourful.
The youngster, alongside her mother from Broke, today took to the air to watch her creation in full flight. Both the Journeys and new tourism campaign success was then celebrated at the Crown Plaza with a hearty breakfast and a traditional balloon blessing. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
A few years ago, this was the place to buy music, purchasing a CD or single over the counter at your local music store. How quickly things change. Now you simply turn on your PC or laptop and go online in the comfort of your own home, and the cost is just a small fraction of the CD price, or even better, it's free. So how is the recording industry still making money? Well, it's all about diversification.
People get the music, their iPod for free, but they'll pay for the concert, they'll pay for the T-shirts, they'll pay for the books and the memorabilia.
Dr. Marg Kibbe from the University of Newcastle is studying the increasing popularity of digital downloads and says music collections are no longer a set of favourite albums, but a set of ever-changing playlists on a tiny portable MP3 player. In 2006, Australians bought 3 times as much digital music than in the previous year.
People want their music with them. People are creating their own little sound space, if you like.
Surprisingly, recent figures show an increase of almost 8% in the volume of music products such as CDs sold in the last year.
Interestingly, people are saying they're hanging on to their CDs. A lot of people are buying CDs and then ripping music from that to put on their iPods or their portable music players.
But there has been a 5% decrease in overall CD sales, with consumers turning their backs on top dollar albums and instead heading for the bargain bins. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Mark Tafua really has taken big steps in a short time. 6 months ago he was playing in the Newcastle Rugby Union Grand Final, and now he's in the NRL.
My girlfriend and my family really keep my head on my shoulders, so yeah, they've always taught me, like, be grateful where you go and where you are.
His coach was grateful too, with Tafua toughing out the game with pain-killing injections in his shoulder.
If you're not sure about Mark's toughness, and probably not from Newcastle, he is one very tough hombre.
And he was full of praise too for fellow debutant Jesse Royal, while Michael Young only found out he was starting hours before kick-off.
Fantastic in front of the Newcastle crowd, packed house, and it was really great effort by the boys, and just tops it off with a win.
Bang's a bit harder and it's just fast, real fast, and everyone's a lot stronger, so it's good.
Still building towards his best football, Kirk Reynoldson couldn't believe he scored a double.
I've never done it before, mate. Like I said, you just get over that line and you're just that excited, you don't know who to high-five.
5'8" Jared Mullen wouldn't be a bad start as he continues to grow into the halfback spot.
Pretty happy, but I've still got a lot of things to work on, kicking game and just every part of my game. So, mate, I'm still young, so I'm still learning.
The Sharks' Greg Bird escaped suspension after going on report last night and joined his country teammates in Coffs Harbour today, along with Danny Badiris, Clint Newton and Kurt Gidley. Jim Callanan, NBN News. The BMX track at Lake Macquarie has often been described as one of the best in Australia. Now the best riders in the country get to find out for themselves. An Olympic sport these days, BMX has enjoyed something of a renaissance in recent years. But it's also made Wade Booth's dream of reaching the Games even harder.
It's not going to be an easy battle to make the Olympic team. It's probably going to be an easier race at the Olympics than actually making the national team.
It's a big call, but that's how strong things are in the discipline these days, and with just a handful of spots for Beijing up for grabs.
Australia's one of the best countries right now with BMX riders, and there's probably 10 riders that could probably take those 3 spots.
But Boots' work this week isn't just about getting himself closer to the 2008 Olympics, but developing riders for future games. He's the National ID Talent Coach, and many of his charges will be out to earn spots on Australia's World Championship team over the next 5 days of competition.
ACTU Secretary Greg Combay is the hot tip to be the next political parachute into the Hunter. He'll use the next 48 hours to decide if he can test pre-selection for Charlton, and today rejected a suggestion that a deal has been done ahead of the ALP national executive vote.
Not to my knowledge. That'd be interesting to find out. No, I don't think so.
Sitting member Kelly Hoare will nominate for Saturday's ballot, but whether one of the region's first women federal MPs can win a 4th term is uncertain. Patterson is also on the Labor power brokers' agenda to find a challenger to Liberal MP and Parliamentary Secretary Bob Baldwin. One prospect could be Jim Arneman, who narrowly lost his battle for the state seat of Port Stephens. But the ambulance officer come budding politician has to rein in the government's 5% hold on the seat. Newcastle's Sharon Grierson will face a local rank-and-file decision on whether she stands for a 3rd election and believes her 2004 result must be considered.
I do hope that, yes, my consolidated vote last time, the highest primary and 2PP swing in the country to a sitting Labor member.
And Labor members will have a say in Shortland with Jill Hall a starter for a 4th term. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Residents say there's no room for secrecy over such an important community issue. They've condemned council's decision to keep the public out of its meeting, while councillors received legal advice about the possibility of going to court to get either a curfew or reduced operating hours on pubs and clubs.
Well, the community was very disappointed to be locked out of the meeting.
The Council is yet to decide on a course of action. Until such stage, we think that all its advice should be open to the public and transparent.
However, the Lord Mayor says the information councillors received directly related to its chances of success in a court case, something they couldn't risk licensees getting wind of.
The information that we have at this stage needs to be kept as evidence for a case if there's going to be a case. So all of those things clearly say that the discussion that we had in relation to this matter had to be in confidential session.
Council's lawyers are preparing a legal document for councillors to consider before they decide whether or not to take licensees to court. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
With its flashy new pink and purple paint job, bold graphics and top-notch interior, the express screen bus would be right at home at a custom car show. But it's the service it provides that's deserving of accolades.
Women who attend the service want to be in a comfortable environment. Refurbishing the vehicle makes that environment a whole lot nicer.
From Monday, the entire fleet will be back on the road and able to screen upwards of 100 women per day. This unit will spend 6 days in Merriwa. The health service's difficulties in attracting radiographers and radiologists is now a thing of the past.
We are able to screen the women, have their examinations read, and then those who need assessment can go on to assessment all within the required timeframes of the Cancer Institute.
In other health news, the Mater Hospital has unveiled plans to change its name following a handover in ownership last year. From July 1, it will be known as the Calvary Mater Newcastle. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
Not many people know it's here, but Ash Island near Hexham has some of the healthiest mangroves around, and over the past 13 years, volunteers and a small group of paid staff have built boardwalks, cycleways and a community garden. Funded largely by the state government, the project is creating a tourist attraction in its own right. But after 13 years and over $1 million of ratepayer support, Newcastle Council decided enough was enough and dropped it off the draft budget.
I don't think the ratepayers of Newcastle can keep funding this indefinitely.
We understand that the Council's got some severe financial constraints at present, but we certainly believe that Kooragang Wetlands is a great community resource for Newcastle and that it should represent good value for Council's investment.
The Council says the wetlands must become self-supporting instead of expecting a handout from ratepayers every year.
Representation's been made to Council, and Council's decided that we will look at that in the first review of the new budget, which will probably be September, October this year.
Paul Lobb, NBN News. This is the sticker Newcastle mum Fiona Clark hopes will get drivers to slow down. She's distributing thousands of them to schools, motivated by an experience she had while driving her own children to school.
We slowed down to 40 when we came into a 40 zone, and an impatient motorcyclist went around us over double-centred lines and vented his anger at us. And so my children's comment at that time was, why doesn't he just get in the zone? And so the bumper sticker became their voice.
Police have backed Fiona's campaign and say that a trial of flashing signs outside schools is also improving safety.
There is a little bit of confusion with the times insofar as the warning signs on the school 40 zones, and as the signs are rolled out, the lights will come into effect and it will then warn drivers, even if they haven't got a watch, that it is the time to slow down around schools.
Fiona is selling the stickers to schools at cost, with schools then on-selling them for $2 as both a fundraiser and a safety campaign. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The city and country squads are both in camp in sunny Coffs Harbour, but it's certainly no holiday. Among the country boys, Danny Badiris, Kurt Gidley and Clint Newton. And after playing Cronulla on Monday, the three Knights will be out to impress selectors tomorrow night and then back up for Newcastle on Sunday.
3 games in 6 days. It's a mental battle. It's about getting your body. You've got the best care here with physios and stuff, but once you get back amongst the boys, you need to perform and play well on Sunday.
Coach Brian Smith expects the star trio will be battle-weary on Sunday and admits he has his fingers crossed that they'll be okay to play. Smith has slammed the City Country scheduling and believes no thought has been given to player welfare.
It had to be played somewhere, so where can we jam it in? And I find that disappointing. I would like to think that in the future we can still have that game in some way, shape or form, but where it's given proper credence and respect.
And while Danny Badiris, a representative veteran, focuses on winning back his Kangaroos jersey, Clint Newton's making his country debut tomorrow night.
Oh, I think I'm pretty lucky to be here. I think I'm honoured to play for the countryside. It's always been something to aspire to.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. With a perfect performance on the pommel horse, Jack Rickards was happy to be back home, competing in front of family and friends. The state trials helping him prepare for the national championships in July.
This comp's really just a confidence builder, and if I go well at this one, yeah, that's a good build-up for the rest of the year.
For the past 2 years, he's won the under-13s age group, but this year brings an extra challenge. He's up against older and stronger boys in the under-15s. Such is the commitment to his sport, Jack has left his family and moved to Sydney to train full-time.
We train 6 days a week, about 30 hours a week in the gym, and we're putting it with school as well. That's a lot.
And he's not the only local teenager reaching great heights, with a strong contingent from Lake Macquarie among the 2,300 entrants in the National BMX Championships being held at Argenton. While they know the track well, local stars Chris Westwood, Jeffrey Lawrence and Adam Sanderson spent the day warming up, while Argenton's Brianna Gould-Goldsworthy was among hundreds of BMX babes, proving they can match it with the boys. Competition begins on Friday, with the finals held on Sunday. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.